What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the No Rain, No Rainbows podcast. I'm glad to have you. I'm your host, Ted Phaeton. If this is your first time listening, thank you so much for the time. Really quick, this is a podcast about getting through your hard times. Life is hard, but it's worth the squeeze. And here we try and share stories and tactics on how we can get through those hard times, and maybe some stories on how you can get motivated and inspired to push through your storm and get to your rainbows, because they are there waiting for you. Joining me today, you've probably seen him on ESPN or some of your halftime shows. Welcome today, my guest, Joe Everson, ladies and gentlemen. How you doing?
Hey, doing great. Thank you. Good to be here.
Yeah, it was good to have you.
In my studio.
Beautiful studio, by the way, I have to say.
Oh, thank you so much. This is part of the dream come true, although it is really in its early stages right now. So,
well, even in its infancy, I can kind of see the vision, and I think it's heading in the right direction.
Awesome.
For our listeners who might not have seen your work, your artwork, or might not have seen your halftime performances, why not introduce yourself really quick, let them know who you are and what it is you do.
Yeah, so my name is Joe Everson, and I've kind of put some things together. Although I'm a studio artist, I think I'm most known for singing and painting, specifically the national anthem, although I do more. So at a lot of the beginnings of games and openers for all kinds of events, I got popular doing a scene early on of raising the flag, the painting of the raising of the flag on Iwo Jima while I sang the national anthem. Yeah. And I had a few of those videos kind of start spreading around a little bit, and the rest is kind of history, honestly. But that's what I do. Although I grew up obviously in music a little bit and enjoyed painting, I never thought they'd quite come together like that. So. Yeah. But I kind of grew up back. I'm a northern Yank, if you will, and transplanted down south now and loving it. But I grew up north and to a musical family. I was born and kind of grew up that way.
Nice, man.
We were just exchanging that a little bit up in Saginaw, Michigan.
Yeah, or Sag Nasty.
That's right.
Yeah.
Wow, you really are. Now I know. See? You weren't lying to me.
I'm one of you, man.
Yep. Sag Nasty.
It's awesome. And I love the story of how you had those halftime performances that got a lot of attention, because here I kind of want to pull back the curtain on what happened before that.
Sure.
Would you say that was kind of like the turning point in your career where things really started to kind of blow up?
Oh yeah. Honestly, if we're talking almost more into the rain side of it, up until that point, I had really reached kind of a end of the rope situation.
Wow.
And like I mentioned earlier, I mean, I always enjoyed music. I always enjoyed art. And I was really trying to make strides towards being an artist and making that my sole income and taking care of a family and all of that. But in the process, I knew I had to do other things, obviously, to keep everything afloat and all of that. So, I mean, I can start digging into some of that.
My first question, man, is because I honestly, as you're building your craft as an artist, whether it be in music, painting, and all that, like, what did you do to pay the bills? Because I think you have to give yourself to the art before it gives back.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things I had to do that I remember doing is starting to sort out a plan, at least for the next stage. That's all I could. I mean, I could have a 10-year plan, a 20-year plan, but I couldn't really see very far into that future. And it's really a hard field to kind of feel like you even know where to go with it. You know, someone might say, "Hey, I really enjoy your drawing," or something. You'd be like, "Hey, I'm gonna get paid millions to do this." That just doesn't happen like that, really, usually. So for me, I remember driving a fuel truck locally. There was a gentleman who was really kind to me, and back when I lived in Michigan, technically Midland, Michigan at the time, he had said, "Hey, I own a fuel company, and if you get your CDL, you can move down here." Well, I had visited Greenville before and had been inspired, and a lot of people didn't kind of know that. And that was really kind of the new flame, if you will, inside me. And knowing that getting down to Greenville for some reason felt like it was the right move, on a lot of levels.
What made you visit Greenville in the first place? Because I've never heard of Greenville before a job offer came. I felt like it was one of the best kept secrets.
Yeah, honestly, it kind of has been. And now that I travel a lot, it's kind of funny. Oh yeah, Greenville, I love there.
Yeah.
So who knows how long it'll remain like that, but. Exactly. I had never heard of it. I was pretty content in my northern state for the most part. But I started traveling actually with my brother Ben, who happens to be a vocalist. He travels the nation on a ministry level, working with churches, things like that.
Yeah.
And so I had been singing with him for a little bit. And there was that same gentleman I talked about down here. His name's Terry Snow. I don't think he'll mind me using his name, but he had a group, and he had a baritone part leave his group, and he knew me through my brother, who had previously traveled down here, and I then kind of followed after and traveled down here for a little bit with my brother Ben. That might have been confusing, sorry, but a lot of layers there.
I get it, and I'll say kind of the dots, they connect in hindsight, right?
Yep.
You meet so and so who
exactly.
meets so and so who knows somebody
down
who
the
lands
chain
in Greenville.
Exactly. That's exactly what happened. We found ourselves on kind of a break at his house, him being Terry's house, because I would travel in kind of a trailer, a nice one that my wife and I would travel in as we sang to all these different locations. And so over Christmas, we didn't have a lot of bookings. And we're like, you know what? We're going to stay down south where it's easier to take care of stuff and not freeze to death up north. And that's when I started to spend some time in Greenville, saw it throughout Christmas, had their, I think that was the year they had that crazy ice storm that came through.
Was
maybe
2013?
Well, I think it was sooner than that one actually,
Okay.
but anyway, maybe I'm wrong, but I know there was a bit of snow at least one time, and we just kind of played in that. And I don't know, it was a little bit magical in a couple ways. And I looked at my wife after we were leaving, actually, we were driving up, and I think that's when it was. And I remember kind of looking at her and going, I don't know why, but I feel like we should live here one day.
Yeah.
And she looked right at me and she said, yeah, me too.
Really? Do you think you were running from something or running to something?
As far as when we were going back up north, or just kind of the whole process?
The thought process of like, we should live here one day. Is it kind of saying this has something
that's
I
really
want,
good.
or I don't want to be where I'm at?
Man, that's kind of deep, man.
I'm sorry.
You're already going there. Yeah. No, I think it might have been a mixture.
Yeah.
And I think that some of it was there was a lot of pressure. There was a ton of pressure to perform well, and we were barely making it. I mean, if I really open up at that time, I remember physically looking through the couch for some change so that my wife and I could go to Taco Bell to kind of hang out and just have a good time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she'll tell you the same thing. I mean, it's just that we were kind of in that spot, and we were, although we were taken care of, we knew that it was going to be temporary, I put it that way.
Yeah.
But we didn't know how to make the next move. We didn't even have the money to move, that kind of stuff. So, and we ended up going back to Michigan for, I think it was about a year before we got the call back from Terry Snow, and saying, hey, I could really use you down here.
That opportunity kind of opened the door for you, huh?
Exactly. Then we knew, oh man, this is it. Like, no way.
Yeah. So you land in Greenville, and so what did it look like from landing in Greenville, taking the opportunity? I imagine it's still not art yet. It's still not
art.
What you want to do.
Yep. It was crazy. Looking back, I have a lot to be thankful for with a lot of people who helped. And I think I found that deep within the culture here, honestly, where everyone's really quite willing to take your hand and be like, hey, oh, you're good at that. Have you tried this? And that kind of spirit and community that a lot of folks do have in this area, it was because of that. And that really made it possible. In other words, here's a concrete example. That same family basically that said, come on down, got our rental for us at an amazing rate. And was kind of so we came to a house. You know what I mean? We didn't kind of park in someone's backyard like we thought we might have to do again or something and try to figure it out from there. Although I'd be willing to do that. That was kind of what, situation we were in, and what someone was willing to do, for instance. So quickly made friends with some more family, extended family of the Snows, and there was an artist in there, and his name was Ralph Casea. And he's an artist locally. He had a space in the mill. I don't know if he still does, the Taylor's Mill.
Yeah.
And he was one of the first ones that took me on another tour downtown and introduced me to some artists, things like that.
Nice.
And that was when, after we had moved. And it only lit the fire more. You know, it just kept burning and burning. And so that's when I knew, okay, I know what I'd love to do, and I need to start making a way. So in the house that we were in, a small little, I don't know, maybe 800 square feet, something like that, for my wife and I think we had Lincoln at the time, my first son. And I looked for a place to kind of start setting up, and I had one in the laundry room.
Okay.
So that's where I don't have the easel here right now, but I had, one easel. It was a really flat, big, handmade easel that a friend had made for me in Michigan.
Yeah.
And I moved down here with me. So that's the proof that I was like, ooh, I'm going to do this.
Yeah, yeah. You had the
Yep.
the motivation and
like
the
it's
focus.
coming.
Yeah.
So yeah, there I was. And I remember one of the first paintings I did, my son. So yeah, he was old enough to tell me that I needed to paint Iron Man.
There you go. And that's a pretty big request.
Yeah. So I was like, all right, I'll paint Iron Man. And that kind of started everything.
So the thing I loved about that story is when you mentioned when you first came to Greenville for a visit, you felt inspired. Mm-hmm. And then afterwards you make the decision to move, and you go back up to Michigan for a year. Then you come down and I wrote facilitate growth. You mentioned the community and the culture here of helping each other out. It's almost like you sensed the fresh, fertile soil here for what you were trying to do. You came, you had the right connections. Mm-hmm. The fact that you could move to someplace and there's a house waiting for you. Yeah. That doesn't happen to a lot of people. So there's like kind of the breadcrumbs that let you know you're on the right track.
Yeah, definitely. I think you're nailing it right on the head. It's when you have no other options and you're just following like the breadcrumbs, you're following that next step. That's usually the most difficult part. Mm-hmm. That maybe like someone listening now who maybe is like thinking about making steps to the future. It's hard trying to look way ahead, and sometimes you only have enough light that's just in front of you, but that's okay. I guess is what I'm trying to say. Yeah. And at least you have that one maybe. Yeah. And you might be surprised what that might open up next. And that's what happened as far as my story goes.
Just taking the next step and seeing what's next, what's next. And you don't have to have the whole picture figured out. Just maybe just take the next couple strokes, right?
I mean, it's nice when you have a few more steps kind of in view. And I think it gets easier. It can get easier as, a doorway opens. I think it like grows more doors, if you will. Yeah. And, that starts spreading out wider and wider. Yeah. Very quickly if you want.
Absolutely. So you paint Iron Man.
Right. So,
and then what came next?
So actually I found, speaking of that culture and everything again, I didn't know what style of art I knew what I liked, and so I painted that. And I do like superheroes, things like that. Mm-hmm. And when my son actually first said that, I remember thinking, I can't. Like, what do you mean? And then I was like, you know what? Maybe I can. And just for fun, I did this kind of abstract-y kind of Iron Man kind of look. It was black and white, but it was extremely like splattery and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. But what I found from that was other folks, a community who enjoyed comic art and that kind of thing, actually. Nice. So Greenville Comic-Con, SC Comic-Con, was actually just in the process of starting. I don't know if they were kind of restarting, because I think there might have been something before, but honestly, I believe it was one of the first big ones that they just kind of went after again. Yeah. Is it the TD Convention Center that they have it?
Yeah,
is that right?
It's the Greenville Convention Center.
I'm
now.
sorry. Okay. Yeah.
They just switched it. So.
Okay. They just switched it. Okay. And I found a little community there and tried it out and sold a ton of prints of just fan art, things like that to begin with. And I didn't know what I was doing. I just kind of had a somewhat of a plan. So kind of backing up, when I did that first painting, I decided every day, this is the work part of it. This is the part that's like not the romantic part of your story. It's the like, ow part of your story. And I started painting every night. So I was driving the fuel truck from like 4 a.m. till about like 2, I think it was, so that I could get home and kind of set up shop, if you will. And almost put on a front, although I was doing it, but like, no, I'm actually an artist. I'm not
Yeah.
a fuel truck driver.
Yeah.
So there was like, you know what I mean? Like, say you called and you're like, hey, Joe, how's it going? I saw you did this piece. Can I come by and buy a print from you?
Yeah.
Sure. Can I come by at 8 a.m.? No, I'm busy at 8 a.m. actually, but could you come by at 2:30?
Yeah.
You know, it was like that. and it was just, oh yeah, welcome to my studio, you know? And I kind of skipped over, but in there I found rent at the Taylor's Mill, and loved Kenneth Walker was awesome. He got me in there at a rate that I could handle these things. And this all makes sense down the road, by the way. All these things are really key. Like the fact that we got the rental, that how we got it, and at the rate we got it is just impossible. It seemed.
Yeah. I mean, you look around and you're like, really, is this happening? I always say this, right? Even the podcast we're on, when I decided to start the podcast, I was going to do it on my cell phone. And anybody that has watched from day one to now, they've seen that we've always had good sound quality. We've always had microphones. But my decision to start the podcast, I had nothing but a cell phone. And then because of that, shout out to Andre Subtle Solution, who's the executive producer here on the podcast. He's been with us since day one. I literally met him 2 days after I made the decision. He's like, I have cameras. Another friend of mine has a podcast. He said, I have microphones. And I was able to use his microphones to start. And I literally would schedule 4 interviews in one day. That way I could record all of them and I'd have the month done.
There you go.
And here we are down the line with where the podcast came from. But I was ready to do it on my phone. And I feel like the universe, God, wherever your blessings are coming from, they wait until you commit before they give you the blessing.
Sure.
And they're not just going to give you the rate. They're going to say, no, decide you're moving to Greenville.
Yeah, yeah.
So where would you say was the turning point from? I believe you're probably working with the guys over at Borderlands Comics.
So a number of the guys there were very kind in the sense that they believed in what I was doing. Nice. And I was kind of telling them, you know, like, because they don't. I guess you got to vet people and make sure they can, you know, handle, taking care of themselves and operating a booth. I mean, that sounds really silly, but honestly, it's, you know, they want to be careful on just who's coming through. They let just about anybody in, but the point was that they supported it. They would tell people about it. They would, you know, bring people by. They enjoyed the art. They even purchased from me to kind of like get things going. And there were a number of friends and family that were in the area that also helped. My brother moved down later, that kind of thing. And there were a few years in a row that I did this with them before things started to explode for me, honestly. And I'd say it was about 2.5 years of doing that. Yeah. And other local shows. So in Greer, different areas.
And I have to ask, because I'm sure some of our listeners might be feeling this themselves, because this whole time you're fighting on 2 fronts, right? Yeah. You're an artist, but you're still working your day job or your night job. But was there ever a point during that 2-year span where you were feeling like burnt out and almost, I don't want to say impatient, but you know when you put so much work in and the fruits haven't really kind of come out yet, you're like, where are they?
Yeah. Man, there's a lot of examples of that, and that's the struggle that I think puts a lot of pressure and creates who you're becoming. And even as an artist, back then, for instance, my skills, if you will, were much slower too. And now I've learned to become a very prolific artist, which is really important. But I wouldn't have really thought it was needed, on the level that my eyes are opened up to now, and back then, I might think, oh, I could do that. I could do this amazing piece. Yeah. But is it going to take you a month to get it done? And then what are you going to sell it for? And all those kinds of things. But that's not meant to be, I guess, discouraging. It's really meant to honestly be, look, if you're willing to put it in, you might have to do it longer than you wanted to, at times, or you just don't even know. And there are those spots where you want to stop. The other side of that was actual physical draining. So another part to that I didn't mention was, even though I was driving the fuel truck like that every weekend, about 45 weekends out of the year, I was driving part-time a tour bus on the weekends that I was singing in the group with.
Wow.
So I didn't drive it solely. All the guys did. But that meant, rounds that we would literally get up, and this is probably dangerous to think of, but we'd literally, one guy would be on the steering wheel and would like kind of just let go, get up, and the next guy would sit in the chair, take over, and he'd go lay down. And it was just to keep going. We went to Canada one weekend for a weekend of performances, and then drove back. And then I went out of there, literally hopped into the fuel truck that was at the same house where it was parked, and then worked that day on Monday. So those, it got to a point to where I couldn't drink enough Monster and, or do anything. And I was starting to just fall asleep and things like that. And there were some scary moments for me that were like wake up calls, if you will. No pun intended. In that sense of like, man, I don't know how much longer I can do this, but I knew I had to at the time. Yeah. So yeah,
that's probably one of the realest things we've had on this podcast, because it's I think a lot of people don't understand where, there's some days where you're going to choose sleep or your passion. You're going to choose eat or your passion. Yep. And then when it comes to that, and it's not a discouraging thing, it's, it's how bad do you want it? And, like I say at the beginning of the podcast, it's hard, but it's worth the squeeze. You got to squeeze the lemon to get the juice.
Yep.
And, a lot of people don't want to put themselves through that pressure, because I can honestly say, when you jump into a new project, it's going to be harder than you think it is. It's going to be harder than you think it is. Man. At what point did the music and the painting come together? Because now
that's the key.
Doing the shows.
Yeah. I ran into doing one of those shows. I can't remember which one it was, and I do know it was in downtown Greer at the time. But I had a friend of mine who wasn't my friend there at that point. But now he's my manager, so that's where this is all going. But he actually showed up at my booth and saw me, slinging prints and working it, and just, hey sir, how are you? Like bringing him in, and I didn't know that he was one of the top auctioneers on cruise ships, selling like Picassos and stuff like that, Peter Max and Romero burritos and things like that on these ships, and was one of the top auctioneers at the time. So I had a lot to learn, but I think he saw some of the drive, and then he noticed the art, and he's like, man, I think he noticed the different styles. Like I was willing to do not just one style. Which is dangerous in a way. Yeah. A lot of people want to be known for that one thing, which here I am, the singing painter. But there was also this power that kind of connected with him, I guess. And little side note, he was with a young lady that's now his wife, and it was their first date. And I said they look good together, and how long have they been together, and they would probably make it. So he'll tell you that part of the story. I think it's awesome. But anyway, so he comes in, does his thing, and he's like, well, really good job. Well, it wasn't a year. It was a year later. I was at the same or similar art show, and guess who came by? It was him and his now wife. And they came to the booth, and I was doing my thing, and I had been so prolific, and I had so many more styles. So we're talking, watercolor, charcoal, oil, acrylic, you name it. Like I was dabbling in any kind, and then the styles on top of that, so more abstract, more realistic, and blending those things, and I think that's really key. I think it's okay to do that, and I want to tell some artists that, because I have to stop there. I'm sorry, but
go ahead. No.
This is real. This is very real. Even now, there's something will come up. You'll have a passion or a moment where you're like inspired and you want to do something, and you'll do it. And some people are going to get it and some people aren't. And when you talk about art and how subjective that is to somebody's eye, if you will, and what they like, you're talking really widespread, man. And so, and then you've got a manager in your ear saying, hey, this is selling really good. You want to keep doing that maybe, and you're over here going, but I really like doing this. And it's like, well, okay, give it a try, and that's very like all over the place. So anyway,
but I think that's how you can stumble on great things.
Exactly.
Just kind of relate to that is part of this podcast for me. A lot of folks know I anchor in the mornings, which is good, but that's more scripted and prescribed stories that the folks need to hear and they need. I don't do well with restrictions. I like the restrictions off. On this podcast, we can go left, right, up, down. But I think that does allow for authenticity and some of that realness to come out. And sometimes when you do that and you experiment a little bit, you take some risks here.
Yeah,
you don't
definitely
stay within the lines. You jump a little bit. I think you can stumble on something, right?
Yes. There's a couple of processes that are kind of current that, you know, and some of them are utter failures too. But I can't tell you how many times I've taken, even if it was a used canvas, that'll preach, man. There you go. But like a used canvas that's kind of messed up or something, and I'll kind of look at it and say, oh, I'm going to try something.
Yeah.
And I think, as crazy as this sounds, I actually used one time a little, like, I guess you could say, what would you call that? Like a Hot Wheels car, something like that. And I for texture, I saw that it was kind of fell on my painting, and I decided to go ahead and use the wheels and just use it as a texture to the piece.
Nice.
You know, something like that. Where, and I can see Everett, who works with me. He's a studio director here, and you know, he's kind of looking at me like, "What are you doing?" You know, and it ended up becoming a really cool piece that sits in my house now. I gifted it to my wife. It's over our couch.
Nice.
A beautiful flowers scene, but half that thing was made with like a little car, you know, for texture in the background.
Turn a little accident into
exactly
intention.
Yeah. But that's what we're talking about when it's like, you know, those steps and bringing the music together. Sorry, I can bring that back.
You're
over
good.
That way.
So this is a year later.
This is a year later after the first time meeting him.
Yeah.
And he had a pitch to pitch me. So Daniel's actually he's a marketer. He was working at I believe Jackson Marketing at the time, and you know, he gets those crazy ideas. So he's like, man, I can see some things. He's like, all right, I want to pitch you something. I want to be honest with you, and I want to tell you that I am going to pitch you something, and it's, you know, I want to be real with you, but first I want to buy a piece from you. I was like, okay, that's really key. That's a great way to start with a starving artist.
You have my attention.
Yeah. And he's like, yeah, I want you to do this piece. And it was like a wine pour kind of happening into a glass and splashing. And he's like, can you do that with like a palette knife kind of look? And I did that one. He still got it to this day. It's, you know, one of his like he'll never sell kind of pieces. Yeah. At least that's what he tells me. Maybe after I die. But no. And he said, Joe, I want to pitch something to you. So his original idea, hopefully I'm not, you know, spreading too much, but no, was to kind of create a land-based idea of what he would do on the cruise ship. So you have multiple artists and paintings and things like that, and you would have these, you know, shows, auctions that you would then sell. And he was like, hey, I've been wanting to do something like that, but you're like 12 artists in one. Hence why I was talking about all those styles.
The styles, yeah.
Yeah, and he's like, you know, it'd be kind of nice working with one artist, and would you be interested in doing something like that? So I said, yeah, man, let's do it. You know,
no hesitation.
Not even. No, I was like, yeah. I was like, we'll make tons of money together. It'd be great. You know, and you know, but he showed me a lot of the educational side of how art sells and a lot of that process. And was willing to kind of walk me through some of those things. A lot of times, stereotypically anyway, artists are a little more, you know, introverted or looking inward, that kind of thing. So for me, I think that was really key to see outside the box a little bit on what's this on a practical scale with people who want to buy art. You know, who's going to put what in their homes, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm almost there. This is it.
I like it.
So we're doing that for a little while, and we're doing well. We did a show eventually, but we had another plan, and we did some brainstorming, and Daniel had put on the table, you know, like we had seen some other performance artists, even locally and across the nation, who would do those speed paintings, you know, flip them from upside down, right side up. You got some guys that come to Artisphere locally here, stuff like that. I didn't see it personally there, but, you know, saw some videos, and I'm seeing all these different artists do that, and I'm thinking, man, that's pretty cool. And, you know, I've heard some naysayers, if you will. Oh, that's not real art, you know, and all this. I'm like, oh, you know, I don't know about that, but, you know, of course it is, you know, is what I think. But, But I remember adopting that and saying, hey, maybe I could do something like that. And Daniel's like, man, if you could do that, we could really start spreading the brand. And that's really important. You know, people got to see what you're doing. And, you know, yeah, you can do the Facebook thing, and Instagram was just kind of starting out back at the time, I think, stuff like that. But that's it. So, But we needed something to make it mine. And he's like, I heard you sing kind of before, and I know you like to sing. He's like, sing the national anthem for me.
There you go.
And I was like,
it's a hard song to sing.
Okay. It is.
Yeah.
It really is. It's got a few intervals that are intense, and no matter how low you start it, it always seems pretty high by the end.
Yeah.
And anyway, so I sang it, and he's like, man, I got chills just now. He's like, I want to pitch this to you. And he had me imagine a stadium. And he said, I want you to think about that. And I want you to think, ladies and gentlemen, now singing and painting your national anthem, Joe Everson.
There you go.
And I was like, no way. Really? Like, really? Okay. And we had kind of adopted that idea. So
nice. So you started putting that out there. How'd you kind of, I guess, walk us through from that idea and then the pop, which game was it that you said you really kind of got the traction going?
Yeah, so the main one that really started all of them was technically the Toledo Walleye game in obviously Toledo, Ohio. So in order to get to that point, we started practicing different ideas and concepts. We came up with this scene. I don't know if the camera's picking it up over there, but the painting is over this way. So if you can see that, that's awesome. That is the piece that we finally came up with. And it's obviously the flag raising on Iwo Jima. And that is the result of me kind of talking with Daniel, and we both agreed we wanted to have a good focus with it. And, not just be a show, actually respect kind of the process and what's going on. So I actually had a second cousin, Benito Diaz, who I did not know growing up or anything, but there was a service for him because he had died during Vietnam. And, obviously got the Purple Heart and I think the Bronze Star and some other things of that nature. And it really affected, obviously, all my family. And so there in Saginaw, Michigan, there was a little church that had a ceremony, and they did, a flag ceremony basically, and a gentleman played taps, I believe. And I was pretty young. I think I was like 8. And but this is all key because at that point I had internalized the idea of what he had given. And as much as an 8-year-old can do, which to me it was kind of emotional and all that, but I didn't even realize how like deep seated that actually was. Yeah. And he was like one of the best. You know how that goes. It's like they always take our best kind of a thing. Yeah. And he was so beloved. Everybody loved, just an awesome guy, always encouraging other people. That kind of thing was his story that people would tell within the family. And so anyway, that affected me very, very deeply. And I knew, so we called the project, the painting Project Benny, because he was called Benny. Yeah. And then I knew that at least I would find like a spot of motivation and angle that we wanted to have it come from. So
and it also kind of becomes a little therapeutic too.
Exactly.
In regard to let it go.
Oh yeah. No, that's really good. And I didn't even think of it from that angle. Thanks.
Yeah.
Because that is true. It gave this outlet to like kind of honor him a little bit and let me tell that story a little bit. So, and I know it affected Grandma like crazy when I tell that part of the story too. Yeah. Whether I'm on a news or a podcast like this or whatever, it's huge for the family. Yeah. But so that actually became the piece. So we do a video. I record that piece. It's kind of rough, honestly. It's not. I had about 6 months of practice, so it should have been better probably, but I didn't know what I was doing yet. This was the first one I had done, and I'm trying to do it while I'm singing. And as you can imagine, there were a lot of like mess up videos, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And so we got that video. We pitched it to the Swamp Rabbits in Greenville. They gave us the okay. Shout out to Megan Dotson. She's awesome. Now with the Greenville Triumph, by the way. Yeah. Hence why I'm wearing this shirt right now.
Repping it.
I love, yeah.
Which
they're doing awesome.
Are they going to the finals?
I haven't checked the most recent. I thought they were.
Okay, I think so.
I hope I'm not wrong on that because that would be horrible to say.
Well, by the time this comes out in a few weeks,
right?
We'll probably know the score.
All right.
Of the game.
Anyway, and I recently got to perform this past year. I
was at that game.
Oh, sweet.
I was, yeah.
Very cool. Anyway, so she and it was kind of funny. I hope she doesn't mind me saying this, but when she first saw it, she was actually the video. We're pitching this to her like, we want to do this at your arena. And she's like, okay, and okay, show me. And we showed her, and the home of the brave, and flip it around and everything in the video. Yeah. And she kind of like did this and was like, what is it? And we were like, uh-oh, like, that's not good. And then she's like, yeah, I think I know what it is, and then we're like, oh, goodness. Like, what are we doing? Is this going to work?
Yeah, that's the whole reveal.
Yeah, like, whoa. So she'll probably tell you she just had a little blonde moment or something. But anyway, so we ended up taking that concept still, doing it at the Swamp Rabbits, getting video. Daniel was really thinking ahead, making sure we had, and that should also be something for artists to think of. Documentation is very important. And if we hadn't have done that, we wouldn't have had content to send anywhere. Maybe you're like, well, duh, but seriously, how many times are you, whatever it is you're doing creatively, are you documenting it? Because that's, who knows?
Setting up your phone and putting in a time lapse or something.
Exactly. Yep. It's very key, and especially in a world like today where you got to get it and feed it to somebody quickly, Yeah. So, yep, we had our video. We took it to Toledo, Ohio. I was on my last everything with here's where it all comes to a culmination. Yep. Like the house that we had gotten that someone else like found for us, it was from a nice older couple that originally were from PA. The husband passed away. And so the wife said, he passed away, and I'm going to try to sell the house so I can have, retirement, stay up here with the family and everything. Very nice lady. She didn't mean anything bad, but she sold the house, I think, within 20 minutes of putting it on the market. Wow. Like, had a buyer. Yeah. And so right away we knew, so that's gone. So we were already looking for rent. We could not find rent anywhere close to that. And so I already knew, that's like strike one on resources to keeping this dream alive. Yeah. Because we didn't have any kind of, it was just a little bit here and there, little shows, and I was still doing the other stuff kind of part-time at another location, actually, not driving a fuel truck, but still. But I had just weaned off of that. So I was down to almost no hours, basically done. And I was like, we're going to do this.
This has to work.
And then, boom, that happens. And then we had... one other thing where, and then I also had small rent at the Taylor's Mill as well. And, that would go up a little bit every year, which was normal. But we were getting to that point where it was like, oh, man, I don't know if this is going to work. And I had Everett helping me, who I spoke of earlier, and Daniel, who, by the way, I'm going to say this about him, okay? And he'll be like, I wish you wouldn't have said that. No, I'm just kidding. But he told me, he said, listen, I'm not going to take any percentages, cuts, or anything out of basically anything right now. I'm just going to build into you and build this up. Wow. And when the day comes, when it blows up, I'll take my cut then. Yeah.
And he's investing in you.
Exactly. See, there it is again. It was like, it's so beautiful because I was just like, I don't know that all this could have happened without someone like that. Yeah. I really doubt it, no matter how talented I was, you have to make friends and build and help each other.
Absolutely.
So there we are, boom, got all the video. We're at that point, and I remember calling Daniel and saying, look, I didn't tell Everett yet, but I was like, I don't know that, I'll keep doing art, but I might have to start going back in, full-time or part-time, depending. And we may have to kind of hit the reset. And he's like, okay. He's like, just hang in there. I've got an idea, and I think this might be it. We had the call from Toledo, Ohio to go up there. And he sent a press release and the video to a number of folks up in Ohio.
Nice.
One of them was Jordan Strack. So I have to thank him a lot. But and there were a couple others as well. And they basically listened to it, took it seriously, and they showed up at the game. I told Everett, I asked him, can we borrow your car? It was a Ford Escape, I think. Yeah. And older model, and you could smell stuff burning from it, as we drove.
Are we gonna make it?
Yeah.
Are we gonna make it?
I told him I could pay him out of the prints, because we traveled with paper prints at the time too. Yeah. If we made anything. And other than that, I would take care of his food and his lodging for a couple days on the drive, and would he be willing to go up? And he's like, yeah, man, let's do it. So I was like, all right, if your transmission blows, I'll do what I can, but I don't have any, he's like, okay. So there we go. Boom. We get there. I remember doing the performance, and I remember, honestly, before anything was revealed to me as far as how well it was doing, that place went nuts. Like, really nuts. Almost scary.
Wow.
I was coming back through the tunnel, and there was someone reached over and just yelled, "Semper Fi!" like so loud.
Wow.
And I jumped a little bit and kind of just like looked up and, nodded to the gentleman. And I came through the tunnel, and I was overwhelmed with what had happened. And I think at that point, whether or not I made a living doing it, I knew that I wanted to.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that was like the nail in the coffin. That you're like, this is it.
The culmination of like so much work and passion, and being that introverted Joe who, like, my family would know if this were Joe Everson of 12 or whatever, I would not be able to do this with you. I'd struggle big time. I still struggle, obviously.
You're doing great, man.
Yeah. Well, thank you. But it really is like, and that's where I learned to express in music and art and all that. I could kind of, so I got that minute and 35 seconds to like say a message that was very, very dense and heavy and all that, and important, I think, to the nation and a lot of hearts out there.
And I think it was received, very well received, obviously, as like you mentioned.
I'm gonna sneeze.
Go ahead. Gesundheit.
I think I'm going to.
Gesundheit. God bless you.
Thank you, man.
Very well received, and that's kind of, you mentioned it as a turning point, right? And go from that to, I've seen videos of you, Golden State game.
Yeah. Oh man, yeah. This is the fun part now.
You taking pictures with Ice Cube. Like, all right, it looks like that day was a good day.
That was fun. Yeah.
But just kind of that moment, how you talk about driving up in a truck that you don't even know is going to make it.
Yeah.
You don't even know what the next option is going to be. You might have to go back to work, even full time, and this is the pop that takes you into now your rainbows. We're into the rainbows now.
Yeah.
What's that rush like?
Oh man, this transition is crazy. Crazy. I don't know that I could ever really honestly express how it felt and what went down. But when I was so after that performance happened, one lady who was kind of our handler at the time was just grinning ear to ear. I'm gonna sneeze again.
Bless you.
Man, something's like, okay. It's all this paint. I'm going to sneeze again, I think. Okay. I got to get through this, man. What in the world? Sorry. So there was a lady who was our handler at the time and everything. She was grinning ear to ear. And she was just like, I got something to ask you. She's like, ESPN's reached out. They want to put, your video on the top 10 tonight, that kind of thing. So... and I was like, so what's the question? What's going on?
Yes,
She's like,
please.
well, they need to release the video. They need your permission. So,
where do I sign?
Exactly. So, I remember saying, yeah, definitely. I called up Dan and I was like, dude, it's happening. It's happening right now.
Yeah.
And this was before I actually said yes to her, by the way. I was like, it's happening right now. This is crazy. And, he's like, yep, this is it. I think we want to run with this. So as a team, we went, we're doing it.
Nice.
And that night I fell asleep with my phone vibrating from all the notifications, follows, likes, things like that, just at almost a constant.
Oh, wow.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I've never had that happen before. I don't know, I don't think I ever will again, honestly. But just realizing as I was going to sleep, trying to, that was, changing my life in a way there on its own.
And that's such an amazing image of you going to bed with that phone buzzing, because obviously you probably wake up the next day with a whole bunch of followers and then almost into a different world. And, that's what they would probably call an overnight success. But as we just heard in the past 25, 30 minutes, it took you years to get to that night.
Oh, yeah.
That's the message. A lot of us that are going through those hard times, going through that, it's like, okay, when's it going to come? When's it going to come?
Yeah.
And they say, it takes 10 years to build an overnight success. I usually tell people when your fruits come, they're going to come faster than you expect, but it's going to be longer
definitely
to get it.
Yeah, definitely. Man, all all the rainbow experiences, if you will, after are like mind blowing. You know, we got asked the next day to go on Fox and Friends, which was huge for us, obviously, in New York City, and that kind of refueled the fire on a new level, because I thought it was over at that point. Like, that was the 15 minutes of fame kind of thing, and we were headed back to Greenville, and that's when we got a call, and we turned our car around and drove to New York City with the same vehicle, just so that we could like try to figure out, like, you know, a way to make sure we were on in the next morning's
segment. Yeah.
So I mean, it was, man, that was crazy. But that right there, I think they have something like 2 million viewers, something like that.
Wow.
And so I sold almost every painting I had that day.
You had something to give.
Boom.
Yeah.
And then we also had lined up like images of the Iwo Jima in different sizes, and we sold a ton of those. And then that gave us the capital and everything to start creating this business that we now operate.
Nice.
But what's even crazier with that is Daniel, he was on his way to work. He couldn't actually catch the show because it was during that time he was driving in.
Yeah.
And when he got to his office and like opened up his computer, he had, I think it was over 400 emails like that he had to go through, all requests for bookings, requests for special art pieces. A good number of them were from vets and veterans who, one gentleman said he literally was thinking about ending it all and saw that, and then was reminded, you know, like, you know, he was dealing with PTSD, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And, he's like, no, you know, I'm here for a reason, and we've got a number of those. I get overwhelmed. Man. I can't read them all.
Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, Daniel would give me them because I want to read them all, but he'd have to give them to me like 5 at a time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Can you imagine?
It hits, I'm sure.
Oh, man.
But that's
Project
amazing.
Benny, right? Like, it's almost full circle. Like, you know, what he left behind, you know, was picked up by a distant cousin, you know, that he didn't even know, to kind of retell some of his story and to like use that concept, that motivation to create an image that affects the nation. You know?
I'm blown away. I'm absolutely blown away.
Crazy.
I mean, I don't want to end this before acknowledging some of the pieces that are in here now, and, and giving folks an opportunity to connect with you and things like that. But so, I mean, the success is rolling in, and we're in your new studio, which is awesome. Again, I must say, and I'm looking at a picture of Lincoln. You said you're completing. Yep. We have the flag, Statue of Liberty, and obviously the piece that started it all.
Sure.
Yeah. What are all these kind of symbolic to for you?
Yeah. So I just finished Lincoln today, actually.
Nice.
And I think there's a lot of connections with that one. And some of them might be ones that you might not even think of. One of them actually is I get to go to Arnold Schwarzenegger's house once a year, basically.
Nice.
And we do. We work with a charity with him, and I guess we're buddies now. No. But his favorite president is President Lincoln, and so for his birthday, he actually, from a friend, collected a piece that was called the Lincolnator.
Yeah.
And I created it, and so I gave him like a cyborg kind of, obviously Terminator look to the Lincoln iconic look. Yeah. Okay. So that was kind of crazy and a little bit off center, but the point being that it really wasn't, you know, I learned a lot about Lincoln in high school and all that, but it wasn't until then that I actually started like kind of digging into who he was and what he represented as a president. And I thought, why does he like him so much? And very, very inspired by who he was, and not even just on the outward level that people might know of him, just from history, but like some of the sayings and things that he lived by, if you keep reading, and what he actually believed, was really awesome.
Nice.
Nobody's perfect, but
of course,
there were some beautiful, beautiful things that I've learned personally from him.
Nice.
Anyway, very inspired by him, and obviously with the flag and Lady Liberty, these are all really important to me. So a lot of times when I travel, I'll do the performance piece, but we'll travel with like a secondary piece that can be an added value piece. We've helped raise, for instance, with these pieces, over $1 million for charities for vets, military charities, that kind of thing.
Congrats, man.
Yep, and a good bit of that chunk is actually the studio stuff. Not everything I do takes only like a minute or 3 minutes.
Yeah.
So, and that's what we wanted to showcase and be able to have available. So, anyway, those are a part of a package, if you will.
Nice.
And the Lady Liberty I get to do, especially in a different color palette, and I get to express, be that kind of artist rebel kind of thing. You know, go outside the lines, go outside the palette a little bit, and play around. So whatever colors I'm feeling, warm, cold, and anything like that kind of starts coming in to what I feel like should happen, I just do. I mean,
Perfect.
I love doing that.
I love it. So one of my last questions is, what are the rainbows you're chasing now then? So, what are some of your goals that you're working on?
There's some really big things. We got things moving and happening for a possible Netflix documentary, for instance.
Awesome.
If that all comes through, that'd be great. Obviously, there's a lot of stages along the way to making that happen, but we've already got some nods from some really key individuals.
Nice.
And so I'm praying that one takes place. I think that's really up there.
I'll pray with you, man.
Yeah, man. So we'll see. I know it can happen.
Yeah.
But I've kind of experienced some of those things. But one of the other primary goals is to become a collected artist, if you will, on a scale that allows me to be home a little bit more. So I enjoy doing the performances. I enjoy getting out there, and I'm going to work, as long and as hard as I got to. But there's that desire to be taken seriously in your studio work as well. Mm-hmm. So, and that's starting to happen. We've got a number of collectors that are supporting that idea and love what they're seeing, obviously, awesome. and all of that. So that's a goal. I think that we have, and to finish the studio.
Nice.
But yeah,
awesome.
I think on a final note for me would be, no matter what, I want to have all those goals and everything, but I think that the most important thing is that all of us get really distracted. We can get distracted by looking too far ahead, and not in planning, but just in feeling like we're not doing something right or questioning it. Mm-hmm. And when we're at that point, I go by what my dad kind of told me, and maybe he took it from somebody, but for me, it's from my dad. And that is focus in on being who you should be, and the rest will take care of itself.
Nice.
And that's really calming and helpful for a guy like me who's just all over the place creatively. And, I could be over there like painting anything, a ballerina, and thinking, am I going to sell this,
Yeah.
And that's not so much it. It's first focusing on being and, doing what's right, being who you should be. And those opportunities and experiments will take care of themselves, I think. So
being true to yourself and being authentic. Yeah. People sense authenticity, and as Simon Sinek would say, they'll buy why you do it, not what you do.
Huh.
So, and I think a lot of people can resonate with your art because of that. Joe.
Yeah.
I love the story.
Oh, man, thank you.
Where can folks reach out to you, connect with you, see your artwork, purchase your artwork?
Yeah.
Go ahead and drop all the tags.
Do it. Buy my art.
Yeah.
Definitely go to, so I've got a Facebook page. That one actually, if you looked up Joe's Studio, that's actually a good way to start. You can look up Joe Everson as well. You might get my personal page. I know that was really confusing, but we're in the process of changing that, and Facebook's very slow on us right now. So I apologize. Everything else, though, is Joe Everson Art.
Okay.
So at Joe Everson Art. So Instagram, Twitter, all those kinds of things. And then joeeverson.com for the website.
Nice.
You can get previews of all my art on Facebook or Instagram pretty much. I'm always posting. I think I posted the link in today. So,
okay.
And then usually there's a link in my bios and stuff to find me as well.
Yeah.
So.
I'll have all those links too in the show notes. So folks that are listening on their app, they can kind of just go to the show notes right now and hit some of those links to find you. Or if you're on the website, they're going to be there too. But Joe, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I know there's a lot of rainbows in your future. I can't wait for that to happen for you. We'll keep an eye on things and just kind of reiterating some key points from your story on how everything fell into place, kind of following the breadcrumbs, not knowing what the big picture was, but just really kind of taking the next strokes, pun intended, and just following the road and having that environment for growth, those people around you. A lot of people love the term self-made man. There's really no such thing because you need those people that can help feed you and help grow you. And I love the fact that you had those people that believed in your vision and you kept watering that seed. and 10 years to build an overnight success, right? It's not going to happen overnight.
That's true.
Yeah. So thank you so much. I'm excited for your future. We'll be watching. And folks that made it to the end, thank you for listening in on Joe's story. I hope you found some inspiration from it and some tactics from it on getting through your hard times. Because like we always say at the end of the episode, everybody wants the sunshine, but they don't want the rain. But you can't get the pleasure without a little pain. Let's grow.